Hey everybody, how are you? Welcome back to the update. My name is Jay Gordon. I am in this week hosting for none other than the wonderful, awesome. Are you hearing some feedback from me?
A little bit.
Weird. I don't know why it's doing that to me. It's like I'm getting it echoed. Oh, I found it. Sorry, folks. When you do it live. Sometimes it gets a little wacky. Anyway, welcome back. My name is Jay Gordon. Joining me this week is April Edwards. We're both kind of in for Pierre. Pierre's having some nice time off. It's really, really good to hear that he's doing that. And so you've got myself. You've got April Edwards. Hi, April. How are you?
Hey, Jay.
I am so glad that we could do this together. I always enjoy spending time talking with you. And, now that we actually work on the same team together, we get to have lots of conversations. And we're both, still repping the Able Squid Head posse right here. I thought when I saw you wearing yours, I would try to match up so we could. I always try when you're wearing something that I have, like a similar one, that I always try to match up because I think it's fun.
I have my Able shirt on as well, admittedly. I didn't know if it was going to be warm or cold in my office, so I just went with layers of Able today. Um, as you do.
So Ignite is done.
Yep.
That was last week, and last week we tried to talk a little bit about all the things that came out of Ignite, and there were so many that Pierre and I really couldn't cover it all. But I know that you had some involvement. Well, you want to tell us about your PowerShell session?
Yeah, so I had the utmost pleasure and honor to host Jeffrey Snover, Jason Helmick, a bunch of community MVPs in the PowerShell team on a Ask the Expert Anything session during Ignite. And that was only 30 minutes long. And I'll be honest, I'm a massive PowerShell fan, and the camaraderie and just the knowledge in these guys and girls is amazing. So we actually ended up hosting an after party for about an hour and 40 minutes after the Ask the Expert session. We had several hundred people across the globe log in at all time zones. I mean, it was 1 a.m. for me here in the UK. And we just took in as many questions as we could from the community. We recorded it, but it was great to have that kind of opportunity with that kind of crowd.
Yep, I really dig it. I want to welcome the Azure DevOps community who's watching this show this week on the Azure DevOps YouTube. Really appreciate you joining April and I. We'll try when her and I do these things together to broadcast to you as well. So we've got a lot of cover. And before we start covering what's new, I also wanted to mention you saw this week was none other than .NET Conf.
Yep.
And there was a lot that came out of it. Now there's some really great speakers. I know Jeremy Sinclair was up there, and there was all sorts of really great people from around the .NET community. Did you get a chance to watch much of it?
Not as much as I wanted to. I think one thing for me is time zones. That's really hard for me here in the UK. And I was also delivering other content this week as well, so it's a little bit difficult. But I did catch up on some of the highlights. I think the biggest highlight is .NET 6 is out. And a lot of the conference was about how to apply .NET 6 to all sorts of things, including Azure App Service, how it's natively supported. And there's some great updates on the on the .NET 6 versions. And there are a lot of great sessions from people in the community and people at Microsoft. And it's all fantastic content. So it's great seeing it out there. And it was 3 days of just one great session after the other.
Yep. So, now I think it's time that you and I start getting into this week's news of different Azure updates. And hopefully we catch enough that you all find interesting, and, we have a good time doing it. So the first thing that we've got here is Azure App Service support for .NET 6, going off that whole .NET theme. It's now generally available. The release of .NET 6 helps developers build apps that they want to build for the platforms they want to target. And I know that the language team is always spending time expanding what actually is capable of, with .NET, and it's only grown over the years, and it's pretty and amazing to see what's come of it. But the just to give you a quick rundown, the app service and .NET teams work together to deliver functionality on the same day that .NET 6.0 reached GA. So day zero support, based on some promises that were made last year when the .NET 5.0 GA came out, is they day zero support are Azure Functions, where you can host serverless functions using the Functions Runtime version 4. And then here's another big one, Azure Static Web Apps. It supports full stack .NET 6.0 applications with Blazor WebAssembly front ends and Azure Functions APIs. So they're still leveraging the early access mechanism to seed and distribute the runtime globally. You can find more about this on the blog post that came from all of that. April, I love the .NET, or I should say the app service specifically. I love how it reduces the overhead for people to actually create really rich applications without having to manage servers and handle all the minutia that goes into it. And I certainly don't miss working with backups of websites and stuff. I'd rather just keep all my important things in a GitHub repository or an Azure DevOps repo and just go back to that when I need to deploy, my application. So how does this kind of coincide with IT ops? I think that no matter what we talk about, when it comes to infrastructure, whether it's these platforms as a service or it's infrastructure as a service, it's all relevant to people in operations.
Absolutely. And I think, from my days in ops, we'd have a request in, and we talk about, you and I both work in the DevOps space. And when we talk about the process and the people and the changes, I mean, I lived and breathed through the days where a development team would come and say, hey, I need this. I need a bunch of servers stood up for me, or I need a test environment. And those arguments start going out the door. Reliability starts coming into play and how we deploy those things. So there's still a lot of operational things to do. We just minimize that footprint. And we talk a lot about security in the cloud. And if you're not having to manage an operating system, firewalls, and everything else that goes into it, it lowers that security footprint that you have in the cloud. And, we talk about code first, and your developers can get on and get their code. They can use deployment slots to help test what they're deploying. And there's all sorts of great things they can do, and they're cost effective. And it's that code first mentality. As an operations person, like, I don't want to manage an operating system, get yelled at by developers because I took down their OS, right? So,
well, we've got a lot more to cover, and I think that in itself was a really great little start. We're going to talk a little bit more about infrastructure and easing access to it. And the next story we're going to talk about is that Azure Bastion native client support is now available. It's in public preview. With this new support, you can use the standard SKU and connect to your target Azure virtual machine via Bastion using Azure CLI and your native client on your local Windows machine. So you can use native RDP rather than having to go through the browser experience. And here's the other big one, is you can log into Azure Active Directory join VMs using your AAD credentials. And that in itself really helps with the idea of let's find secure methodologies into accessing our resources.
Absolutely. And I think I've dealt with it a lot with customers where we need access to resources, but we don't need access to all the resources. So, I know I've written a blog. I know, Jay, you're writing a blog about it. Conditional access. We need to give developers access to a machine to do something with code, or someone needs access to administer something. There are different ways to do it. And Bastion has been the easiest, fastest, and most cost-effective way to do that. And it definitely has had a lot of use cases with a lot of the customers I've worked with.
Yep, and I really like this particular image right in front of us. I think that the way it kind of describes it about how you're using the actual Azure portal, or in this case, the CLI plus your local RDP, to make that connection over TLS to your Azure Bastion host. And then your Azure Bastion host uses a virtual network that is on a separate subnet. And that allows you to do direct SSH and RDP into different machines that you have as part of your network. And now that you hear about it, we can do that with AAD. So that means you can set up access privileges and role assignments and all these different things that are specific to different hosts and who's allowed them and into them and when it's right for them to be in them. And the thing that I really like, April, about using Bastion, and it's really part of the key benefits, is like right here. No hassle managing network security groups. So it's not like every single time you need to go ahead and make a change. You're doing it in your NSG. You're putting in an IP address that's for a dedicated host. And then all of a sudden you forget about it weeks later. That person's host gets compromised, maybe gets a keylogger, and then you're running into security issues. So this is just taking out some of those concerns.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of customers struggle with having, when they struggle, like their security team does not allow public IPs. So before we used to get public access or, external access into a VM with a public IP address, which wasn't a great idea. Because I think RDP, our RDP and SSH ports are the highest hit ports in the cloud, right?
Yeah.
So if we can take those out, that helps that quite a bit. And it's a much more secure way, and it travels through the VNet. And I think in the use case I wrote about, we had to traverse VNets, and that was a whole other interesting use case with Bastion. But it provided great, just easy access for developers to go and make some changes. So
absolutely, if there's one thing that I want to do, is I want a more secure experience for myself. And I got to agree with Paul. It's a much better method than building your own jump boxes. Yeah, because in the end, if you're building your own jump boxes, which I remember when I had to do that in the bad old times, we would have to always spend time making sure that IP rules were done. And it just took too much time. It was another thing to manage. And it also was a security risk because, too many people had access to the jump box that we had. Anyway, April, I'm going to let you cover the next one. And I think it is near and dear to your heart. It's a new release of the PowerShell preview for VS Code.
Yeah, so this article was written by Sydney, who was in the after party and the Ask the Expert session. She's awesome. She's so knowledgeable. She helps write modules on the PowerShell team. So one of the topics that came up in the Ask the Expert session and the after party, and for those of you that work in PowerShell, know that we've lost the PowerShell ISE. I say lost it. It's no longer supported. We're all moving on. So they've given us the privilege, if you will, to develop in Visual Studio Code. And the experience was not ideal for quite some time, but that is the new way of working, and it is a lot better. So they've just pushed a new release out. I downloaded it, I believe it was yesterday, for the new preview release, and it is so much better. So if you're writing PowerShell code, you're automating, pull in that extension. It is absolutely improving. And the other thing I say to people is when something doesn't work well, reach out to the product team. They're going to see the issues. If you open up an issue on GitHub for the PowerShell group, you can contribute. You can also help make changes to the product. But it is definitely better. It is a change in working. And I think it was hard at first, but because I was working environments with different types of code, so if I was working on projects with some C# involved, Terraform, whatever, all sorts of elements, not just PowerShell, I needed to be in VS Code anyway. So it does make sense. And the extension is massively improved. So they've brought a lot of stability to the new extension. So if you guys are out there writing code in PowerShell, check it out.
Absolutely. And you can see, there's the integrated console, the shell, and where the LSP servicing will be done. I love all the code snippets that you can get out of using VS Code. I came up as a person using VI, which I'm showing my age. But as the complexity of the way we actually write code increased, it became obvious that you really needed something like an integrated development editor that really improved the experience. And like I said, one of the things I really dig is all the little code completion snippets, ways to actually build your code natively in the and all the different extensions that come along with using VS Code. And it's cool to see that the PowerShell team, who we mentioned before, are really, really committed to building out that product and improving it. And that leads me to also remind you all once again, if you haven't, go check out the session that April did. It is the PowerShell After Party. You can see it's on YouTube. If I remember correctly, you did just a long session about all the new features in PowerShell and things that are going on. So I know we were talking a little bit about .NET and PowerShell, and I know these are development heavy conversations, but in the end, whether you're doing ops or development, you're using these languages to eventually deploy things. You've got to have some familiarity about what our software developers are actually using.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Great. So April, you want to talk to this one a little bit? This is a pretty cool new feature. I really liked hearing about this. Grafana is bringing a managed Grafana service to Azure.
Yeah, so I think for those of you that have used Grafana in the past, you usually had to build your own environment, manage it, maintain it, set it up. When I was running one of the Microsoft Open Hacks for containers, and this was several years ago, you could build your own Grafana server to manage and monitor your Kubernetes clusters. Or you could use application insights built into Azure, but Grafana was different, did other things. But then we had the issue of, well, we have a single point of failure server. What's the point of running this containerized environment if our monitoring tool is on a single point of failure? So yeah, I think Grafana is a great service. I've been working with a lot of people in the industry right now that are using it on-prem, in the cloud as well. So having it as a managed service in Azure is great because it gives it that resiliency. It's a fantastic product, and we have so many people not only just monitoring stuff that are maybe virtual machines, but also kind of your cloud native stuff like your Kubernetes clusters, et cetera. And it's such a well put together dashboard that's really popular. So it's really good to see that come out as an actual managed service. And for those of you that are out there, when you talk about managed services, it means you don't have to feed and water it as much. So we talk about this platform as a service thing, software as a service. It builds out a redundant system for you effectively, which is great.
Yeah, I always love the ability to add that single pane of glass into what we produce and how we review and do all of our different monitoring. And that in itself, I think, is just a really important part of doing IT operations, is being able to get observability into what exactly is going on. And if you don't know what Grafana is, it's a multi-platform, open source analytics and interactive visualization web app. It gives you graphs, charts, alerts for the web when you're connected to all these different data sources. So you can go to something like like I remember when I worked in another company and we had lots and lots of access logs that were coming from, the users that were coming to our website, and we needed a way to kind of visualize, the peaks and valleys of traffic, what time that they were coming in, what the different browsers they were using, things like that. You could feed all that rather than having to parse through logs, writing things like Python scripts or using R natively. You don't need to do that analysis on your own. You can use a service like this. And I think, April, you and I have definitely talked about the value of platform as a service or software as a service.
Yep.
And this is just another kind of advancement in that idea around Azure, is that the more people have access to deploy these types of products without having all what I guess I call operational friction.
Yes.
The more that they're actually able to kind of take part in having this visibility. And I think you and I, we were part of an observability panel, 3 weeks ago. And we talked a lot about how parsing out signal to noise is really important. Um, and I know that services like this help you kind of focus on what's actually important to your applications rather than the old way of doing it with, they say, Nagios, where everything was either red or green, maybe
Yep.
yellow.
Yeah, I think also, we talk a lot about observability and being able to configure what you should have and what you shouldn't have. You're going to get what you measure. And then if you're not measuring something you need to measure, then you're missing out on data. But then you don't want to create so much noise that you're creating alerts. And I think thinking back to, the traditional ops space, you get alerts. If you have a monitoring solution set up and you're getting alerts all the time, which ones do you pay attention to? Which ones do you not? So being actually able to sift through that and have the visualization to be more accurate in how you respond is really critical. But then I think the reality is, we're all going to have outages. Something's going to break, something's going to fail. So being able to respond to that quickly and acknowledge those things better is really helpful. When you're working in the cloud or on-prem, it doesn't matter, anywhere. We've all had those outages. So yeah, I think they've done a really good job in making the visual side of that really clear, really nice, and easy to understand and get started with. So the documentation on it is pretty good. So
I really dig it. So I think what we can do next is talk a little bit about some things, because we got about 7 minutes or so left. And I want to make sure that we cover a few things that are near and dear to your heart. One of them is the DevOps Lab. And I know it's been really great to do the DevOps Lab with you. We did this one just this week. It came out talking about collaboration and communication with GitHub and Teams. I really love watching you kind of take these big ideas and thrive with them. Any interesting new episodes coming up?
We have a lot of awesome stuff coming up. We've had a big kick on infrastructure as code in the last, I would say, quarter or so, which has been great. I love infrastructure as code. It's very much untapped, so some great resources. So we have actually HashiCorp coming up soon, but we've had Pulumi on the show. Coming up in the next year, we have Xbox coming on to talk about how they do DevOps. I also am doing a large series with our DevOps Dojo team, and they're taking the practice of DevOps into an 8-part series, which is going to be really cool. I also just had some folks on recording about Dapper, and that will be coming out soon. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming out. We're trying to touch all sorts of different things. And then there's some new products that I can't talk about, but that are going to get released in Azure. And I am lining up getting those recorded for the new year. So we'll have some new product feature releases. I will give you a hint. It will involve testing, which is very important. Very important topic. So there's a lot coming down the pipeline. There's a lot of cool stuff. I'm looking forward to the Xbox team coming on because we're going to be talking about how they use Bicep, how they use infrastructure as code, and how they use DevOps and how they deploy. And I'm a big Xbox fan, so yeah.
So we've got some community. Oh yeah, dope. I've got an Xbox X. I really should use it more, considering how much work it is that you need to put in to actually get one. So at some point, I will probably, now that the winter is here, try out a lot of my Game Pass available little toys that I've got. So you've also got this Automation and DevOps Summit coming up for PowerShell.org. I know Pierre is part of that. You want to talk a little about that?
Sure. So Pierre, who's not here today, is taking a day off. Well, a day off is day off. He's coming out of his leave to join me for the opening keynote on Monday at 9 a.m. in officially Tennessee time, so Central Time in the U.S. We're going to be giving a shared keynote. I've never given a shared keynote before, so this is going to be a lot of fun. I think the big thing about this event, we were really excited about it because we were going to do it in person, and we had this amazing demo ready to go, but we can't do it remotely, which kind of stinks. But we are still doing a great demo. We're going to be talking about automation. The title of the keynote is, I should know this. We went through 2 titles, and I'm trying to remember which one we went with, but it involves ops. in DevOps and automation. So it will be awesome. So you guys should try and join if you can.
Absolutely. And then another big event that's coming up next week is the Azure Infrastructure as a Service Day. So it'll be available for you, I believe, on Learn TV. You'll be able to learn about all the latest innovations across compute storage and networking services to help you run those business critical workloads. I know that's important for a lot of our viewers, that there are speakers like Aaron Chappell and Andy Vargas that you'll be able to hear from. What you want to hear are what are the real world applications that you can do with these services for infrastructure. The reduction of overhead is something we talked about a little while ago, and hearing people explain how that'll all come together, very important. And then I believe, April, we've also got one other big thing that you're going to be doing, and that is an AMA update, or I should say an AMA for DevOps. Who are you doing that with?
I'm doing that with Martin Coupland. He's one of the UK MVPs, and I'm going to go ahead and update a banner for everyone as well to see. So this is actually part of the festive tech calendar for 2021. It's ran out of the UK. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say it's ran out of the UK. It's hosted by several of the MVPs in the UK. And it's running through the entire month of December. So if you check out the website, you can sign up for the session. So I'm doing the AMA with Martin to talk about everything DevOps. It's just any and everything. As part of that, we're also raising money for girls who code. And as we were starting the show today, this all got published, so I can now talk about it. So if you follow this link here, you can donate to Girls Who Code as part of the festive tech calendar. Love to have you all donate, be participating. There's some amazing sessions. It's for the community, by the community. So I think it's great to see such an initiative come out of the MVPs.
Absolutely. And so one of the things we do every week, Pierre always asks me, what module for Microsoft Learn do you think we should look at? And with the announcements around .NET 6, I thought that the introduction to .NET Learn module will be really great for everybody to check out. It'll be linked in the show notes, so you'll be able to go there and take a look. If you don't know already, Microsoft Learn is free education on different Microsoft and Azure subjects. You can learn everything from .NET all the way to M365 to how to deploy with containers. And that's all really cool. So I recommend you check that out. So April, we're down to our last minute, and I wanted to ask you, any cool stuff this weekend you got going on?
I'm racing. It's cyclocross season. I'm going to go race on a bike in the mud. It should be fun. How about yourself, Jay?
I am going to go see a band tonight here in Brooklyn, New York, at a wonderful club called St. Vitus Bar. It's one of my favorite places in the world to go to, and spend some quality time with some people I care about. And I think awesome. that's always really great. And then next week, get back to it. Lots more work to do. Next week, we'll do AZ Update, and Rick will be joining me. And I think you're all going to enjoy that. So I hope you enjoyed today. Thanks for giving us a chance to kind of get you all up to speed. And I believe what we will do is see you next time. Say goodbye, April.
Thank you, everyone.